In order to fully understand the Space Shuttle fraud, I want to take a very quick look at the significant fraud that came before it, which was called Skylab. The Skylab fraud was performed using a jumbo jet. The ring you see here fits into a 747 perfectly, which enabled them to get full zero-G footage in short clips, which were then simply presented as highly edited pieces of footage. The raw footage of these highly edited short clips has never been supplied. They also exploited 1/3 and 1/6 G for longer unedited footage. In this particular clip, they cleverly exploited the speed and the momentum of the actonauts, running and jumping, to overcome the reduced G. Here, they have slightly slowed the speed of the film to give the impression of full zero-G, with the added bonus of slightly increasing the unedited clip time. Also, in this production, clever use of a well-known editing technique, I have slowed the footage to show the edit point opportunity, which is to slip in an edit as the subjects leave the frame, as well as the aforementioned techniques from the previous clip, gives the impression of longer length of unedited zero-G. They also use studio work, with wires and harnesses hidden with poor quality recording and motion blur from a slow frame rate. Also, they used a form of stop-motion filming, which they called fast action photography, which enabled any number of multiple cuts with complete resets or changes in rigging arrangements wherever required. And thus, NASA were able to fool the world into thinking they had an orbiting Skylab where they were boldly sciencing like no one had ever scienced before. All praise the holy name of science, peace be upon it. The withholding of raw footage is a pattern of fraud that continues to this day, where an unsuspecting and undemanding public take whatever they are given by NASA, and there is no obligation on the part of the fraudster to publish the raw footage after each mission or expedition, despite the trillions and billions and millions spent on the space industry. In my last communication with NASA at the time of publishing this video regarding the Skylab raw footage FOIA request, they said they were not even sure it exists, and if it does, they could not give a crap about finding it for the paying public to see, paraphrasing of course. This is all especially sick now, as there is the medium of YouTube to make all sorts of raw footage available to us. The importance, though, of covering the Skylab fraud first, before addressing the Space Shuttle, is that NASA learnt lessons and built on the techniques I have just mentioned, as well as for you to understand that there are errors consistent with a fraud in all NASA missions. But most importantly, that born out of the experience of defrauding the nation with Skylab, came forth the desire for longer periods of substantial and flawless zero-G footage. The mechanical and physical nature they had to set about this, because CGI had not yet been invented, led to NASA conceiving and giving birth to the zero-G shuttle. I don't want you to think that the zero-G shuttle was just a flash in the pan, a moment of genius. It came after years of hard work from NASA, lying, cheating and deceiving. Let's not underplay it either. The zero-G shuttle was truly a masterpiece in their repertoire of criminal activity.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thunderbirds are go.
STS-1 was launched in April 1981. There were 135 missions at a total cost, in 2011 adjusted figures, of $196 billion, which averages out at $1,451,850,000 per mission. The final mission was in July 2011. This presentation is going to show you powerful evidence of a fraud. evidence consistent with a fraud, and a pattern of fraud that ties in with cinema special effects rather than the developments in film recording technology. The only evidence we have is the footage produced by NASA. There will never be an investigation that is launched by the powers that are, which will expose the fraud. However, there is enough evidence for any reasonable-minded person interested in truth to be able to see it. No degree in engineering is required. I've spent my own money on Freedom of Information Act requests with NASA, watched endless hours of footage, and am now ready to show the role the Space Shuttle played in the Great Space Hoax. I've invested this time and money and energy so we can better understand the fraud. I know people, generally speaking, don't have the time to invest, so these are my considered conclusions of the investigation. The Space Shuttle was in fact a glorified zero-G plane. NASA exploited the extended, flawless zero-G footage it offered in the post-flight press conferences, with the added bonus that the astronauts had the hugely extended zero-G freefalls as a genuine experience to discuss during the presentations. From the early days, they also combined the perfect zero-G footage with studio performances done with wires and props in low-resolution video to help hide the fraud. With the invention of post-production CGI, the footage again changes, and they're able to offer better effects of the longer, more substantial apparent zero-G. However, if this were not a fraud, such footage would have been available because we already had the recording technology from the start. With the invention of live CGI and augmented reality, they were finally able to rest the zero-G shuttle confident in their ability to fool the public without it. I shall now prove this to the greatest extent I can, without the authority to kick down their door and raid their premises. NASA is nothing more than an overpriced magic show. Once you see the tricks, it's rather embarrassing for the performers and those that think somehow NASA are being of service to us. Like I said, there's no need for a degree in engineering to understand the Space Shuttle fraud. Nor is there a need for endless debates about the nuances of rocket propulsion. We need only study the footage critically, and in this particular clip coming up, it literally comes down to the simple game of spot the difference. And if you study the clip closely, you will see that the king is wearing no clothes, or rather that Chris is not in zero-G like he claims. Fanboys will not be able to accept this because they are confused and have been told there is no such thing as up and down in space. So is Al really any different? They will play mental gymnastics in their head to justify their stance that Al is no different in image 1 than he is in image 2. This clip is taken from STS-74 Flight Day 5. It is a great example for me to use because this shows that the Russians are involved too. This is recorded on Mir, and they got there by going up on the Space Shuttle, so it confirms both Mir and the Space Shuttle were a complete and utter fraud. This is recorded in the post-production CGI era. The flowers at the front are a prop on a spring, and the wires and the headphones to the left are a marionette-style prop. This is a magic show, and I'm going to break it down for you.
Also, as you can see, we can sit anywhere we want when we're in microgravity. So the whole sense of up and down changes. And it really doesn't matter which way's up. It just becomes arbitrary. And it's amazing how quick you adapt to that. But the body adapts very quickly. It's kind of surprising, really. You wouldn't think after millions of years of evolution there'd be any reason for the body to adapt to microgravity, but it adapts very well.
I want to show you the difference between genuine zero-G recorded on the zero-G shuttle in freefall mode versus what Chris has just done. Please note the lack of effort required on the push-off with just his fingertips to get sufficient momentum to do the turn. And then as he comes back around here, he does another tiny push-off with the tips of his fingers, and that's sufficient momentum to get all of those turns. Now I want you to understand the scene with Chris in is just a magic trick. It is done in the studio, and here it is. Can you see the difference? It's really obvious once you see it. This scientific harvest of errors comes because NASA wanted to do live interaction with people on the ground to strengthen the spell. So here we go. Chris puts his hand onto the table and grips the table. He then pushes up from the floor, which should, if this was in genuine zero-G, have given him enough momentum to complete the maneuver. And he'd also be able to direct the maneuver perfectly with that grip that he has on the table. So there you go, he's jumped up off the floor, and let's just remind ourselves how effortless this should be in genuine zero-G, with this clip being recorded in freefall mode. And that is enough momentum we've seen from the clip that's in genuine zero-G for him to be able to complete the manoeuvre now. Now, a jacket's about to come into view, and there's a couple of things going on here. This is a pre-rehearsed trick. So he goes to push down on the guy in the jacket who's extended his arm, and the first push down goes wrong. He doesn't quite get his leg sufficiently far forward to get enough purchase for the leg up. Chris double dips and goes for the second leg up, whilst transferring his weight onto his hand that's on the table. But the guy in the jacket isn't expecting the double dip, and as he puts his weight onto the table, Chris doesn't get the support he was hoping for from the double dip, and his hand slips, proving there is weight in this scene, and he gets caught by his wire. If you're new to this, your mind will already be making excuses as to why this appears as it does. That's perfectly normal. Everybody does it. I've done it so many times with NASA. Take your time with it, go back and watch this whole section again, and you will see it. The guy in the jacket panics and starts moving up as far as he dare. He's got no idea what's going on. The guy on the left sees that it's all gone horribly wrong and decides to get involved by giving a push. He also wants to control the manoeuvre, as the rigging is also having an effect and being controlled off scene, and gives him a little pull at the end to stabilise him into the 180-degree position. You can have the person controlling the rigging near or far, and they can jump or pull to give you lift. More expensive rigging sets are mechanical, and the guy behind Chris looks like he may be controlling Chris. It's hard to tell. Weighted bags can also be used to assist lifting. Chris, due to the sheer effort this is taking now, has to flail his leg there to try and stabilise himself a little bit. Remember, Chris hilariously assured us there's no such thing as up and down, and yet there he is, exactly 180 degrees from the position he started in. So let's talk about those headphones for a moment. We know they are not in zero-G, like we know these are not real dinosaurs chasing this man. So either they are post-production CGI, which would require an opportunity to do that work, or they are a prop. Let's just see how much effort can go into making a prop. It is certainly possible the headphones could be a prop, made of special tension wires with some thin rubber cords to support the headphones, or something like that. But a question I feel that must be asked of this interview as an individual interview is, did they have the opportunity to get it into post-production before releasing it further? Did anyone else take a recording of the screen the NASA broadcast was coming through whilst the live performance was being done and the interview was being held?
The flights are continued.
So we can see here in the Russian interview just before the American interview the appalling image quality, but there is a record of what the Russian interviewers were seeing. This is very rare and almost non-existent with NASA in this era, so we may never know the how of the headphones, but I think NASA would have the opportunity in this era to perform the interview, say they will send a better quality recording from HQ as soon as the shuttle lands, and therefore be able to do post-production work if it were needed. Overall, the image quality is pretty poor, and mostly they use props from all the interviews I have seen. I just want people to understand. In some interviews in this era, there was that opportunity. So let's take a quick look at this rare clip where we get glimpses of what the audience were actually seeing, because it proves the technique NASA used, whilst not particularly significant for this interview, is important for the how of the fraud on other interviews. Here we see NASA using a similar technique as the Russians, with a reduced visual quality for the live audience, with the added bonus from NASA's perspective of a smaller screen a fair distance away from the audience. This is recorded at the Marshall Press Center, so we can assume a good number of interviews at this time from NASA's press centers were held in this format. What is not immediately obvious though is that we can see from this clip that NASA are reducing the viewable screen size for the live audience. Let's take a closer look. I have zoomed in on the screen, but ensured that we can clearly see the borders of the television. We can see in the top right that the light fills right to the corner in the live view, but we can see in the post-production view that we seem to be behind some sort of a frame. We can also see above the actor's head in the foreground a marker where we can compare what can be seen on the edge of the screen between the live recording and the post-production recording. We can see it's definitely a bigger frame of view in the post-production. The top left we can see that the available view of the item is smaller in the live view than in the post-production view. Above and to the center is an item which is obscured from view in the live view. It is hard to get an exact replica between the two images because the live view is a recording of a screen. However, it being a recording of a screen does not account for the differences observed. The differences observed are proof that the image NASA show the audience is not the same as the post-production piece, and it is proof they are reducing the viewing frame and the image quality for the live broadcast, which gives them the opportunity in this post-production CGI era to add in a floor or ceiling for the post-flight release. So here we see the same behind-the-frame post-production view that we saw in the last analysis. It is clear from the audio interaction with the interviewers that they can see what's going on. But what is not revealed, because what we are watching is the post-production version, is the vision quality and the framing size they are watching. So watch this now. By applying the same technique I have proven NASA use, we can get rid of the ceiling. This means that access is now granted for the wirework from the top, which explains how this film was made. The roof image is added in later as post-production effect. Generally speaking, in the shuttle era, due to the size of the shuttle, in any given interview, if the ceiling was in view, then the floor was not, and vice versa, giving NASA the opportunity to easily have wire access depending on the direction the actors were hanging. In the live interviews, the footage showing was taken with the Space Lab configuration in the payload bay, so it's not the normal location for an interview on the Space Shuttle, but worthy of showing. I want to lighten the mood just for a moment and go back to the last interview, which I believe was recorded upside down, and show it at speed with the correct orientation, with the views of the interviewers edited out. But first, I want to show you this. Get ready to be disorientated.
You know, that was a pretty impressive stunt. The people down at the dock certainly thought it was cool. But you know, it's not quite the same as performing a really great trick in front of a live audience. You're going to be seeing some pretty miraculous sleight of hand. Now, I imagine you people watching it on TV might be a little skeptical. The tricks that we've worked so hard to accomplish by natural means are not amazing at all when you use cuts, edits, computer effects, or other television cheating. So just to keep reminding you of the live studio audience keeping us honest, every so often I will yell, "Are we live?" And if you're seeing live here in the studio exactly what they're seeing on their TVs at home, you say, "Yeah." Let's try it once. Are we live? Yeah! Now, a little bit earlier, you saw me handle a deck of cards, but my partner, Teller, is the real pasteboard handler of the team. Teller, show him your rising card. But I think you can do a little better, Teller, all the way. Woo! And if that ain't enough, how about the rising cards? Are we live? You know, I've sure been enjoying your country's fine teas every afternoon, but to add a little excitement to our tea time, I invented this trick, the bouncing scone. Yep, it bounces like rubber, and yet Fit for the Queen. Are we live? Oh, come on, Teller. Up your comedy magic tricks again. Get rid of that thread. Take her up, Robbie. Come on, Teller. There you go. Dancing handkerchief. Okay, enough. We can do one better than the dancing handkerchief. How about the floating light bulb? Strings or wires there, you'd be able to see them. But there is still one wire, so just to make sure you're impressed. Are we live? We'd like to talk right now about the most famous and skilled magician in Great Britain with a weekly TV program on BBC One. I'm referring, of course, to the lovely Debbie McGee. You may remember her, she's on TV all the time with her short, balding assistant. The lovely Debbie McGee seems to be able to do everything. She can float in the air in a direction, have hoops passed around her, and smile through anything. Can Debbie do this? We are better than Debbie McGee.
So then there is this view for the live interviews, which of course is a green screen backdrop. The use of green screen enabled them to have all sorts of pre-recorded items going on in the background, which in the post-production CGI era was important to enable them to include weightless post-production special effects imagery and patching and make it appear live. I've always loved this scene, not because there is hard evidence proving that it is a green screen, but because you can just see it is. Note the 180-degree position between the two guys at the front, and think on this, there is always a discernible up and down in the live interviews. I wonder if on this clip NASA had gotten complacent about how stupefied their fanboys are, and did not know that once people understood that none of what they show us regarding anything above cloud level is real, that these guys would just look really stupid. Another technique they use is cutting the live stream to the audience and adding stuff at the end that was not in the live stream, but when it was viewed in post-production release, nobody would have any idea where the live stream had been cut. I have hard proof of that from my FOIA request for STS-51D. And remember, what is not there is just as important as what is. The actonauts do not seem keen in the Space Shuttle era to be busting out the liquid tricks in the live interviews. I can go as far as to say I have never seen that done in the live interviews in that era. Was that because they had not thought about it? Because there were plenty of informal interviews where they would have had the chance? Or is it because they did not have the tech to perform that trick live, and the mechanical props they would have had to have used to try to pull it off live, even with the reduced vision quality, would have looked too fake? Let's take a look at this bozo politician wannabe space clown talk about the prospect of doing a water trick whilst failing to do a simple spin. First, let's take a sped up reminder of how easy this should be. It would seem any old monkey can be a space clown. Gone are the days where young, fit, intelligent people were required to simply perform the tasks needed in the rigours of space, and literally any overweight, old, weak, infirm, physically challenged, emotionally retarded or mentally incompetent Muppet can apply.
What comprises relaxation here is really standing on your head and looking at things from a different direction, or putting balls of water out that just float right in front of you. I guess maybe we should plan to do that sometime when we're on the air here. Or floating around up and down here. You know, I could just as well turn right here, right now, and turn your studio up one side or the other like this, Peter, because you can see me coming up there. And that's not your studio turning over, that's us turning up, and that's just the normal part of the floating around up here. So I'll have to get back in the picture here, but
So let's start at the end. This is STS-135, flight day 13, the last day of the last shuttle mission. Here we can see they have a live CGI necklace, not in this clip, but also towards the end of the shuttle era. They have live CGI patches, such as loose-fitting floaty watches. In this scene, we have the sense of up and down. Whilst it is always possible to discern there is an up and down, sometimes it's hard to say if they're hanging upside down or not. Here, the magician's hand movement gives it away, and normally they would have an invisible wire when giving the mic airtime, but for some reason they went with using the microphone lead. The mic on a lead is the preferred tool of deception for the shuttle live interviews, because the lead has offered so much over the years prior to the live augmented reality era. It offered the ability to restrict the movement of the less talented space clowns. These guys got caught in their strings a couple of days ago. We'll cover that in a moment. I guess that's why they've been put on a leash. To prevent the ability to show off a mic spin, but allow for the more talented live magician monkeys, actonauts, to perform straight short and long ball airtime mic passing. But I will remember the wired microphone best for its ability to add to the general ambiance of faux zero-G. So here we see, now augmented reality is a thing, having a wireless mic is not a problem. However, this clip shows you why they wanted to keep the mic on a lead prior to live augmented reality. They could not risk being asked to do something like this live, and certainly we could have expected something like this we are watching now to have happened naturally in the Space Shuttle era in an interview if the mic were not on a lead. They could barely do a short pass on a string in the shuttle era and make it look convincing. Never mind something as extravagant as this. I'm sure the average fanboy will be thinking there must be a technical reason they did not use a wireless mic, like we see here, but we've seen that they use wireless technology for the headsets, and we've seen the headsets were problematical in interviews, which would make this style of mic a far superior choice to the headsets if they were actually in zero-G. And we know the type of mic we're watching here has been around for decades. Here is Axl Rose, dressed in a fishnet top and a leather skirt, making good use of one in 1992. Boy, Axel, calm down. So the fanboys, I'm sure, will be wanting to say, NASA just did not think of it. You know, they were busy. Science! Well, let's go back and listen to this from STS-1.
This shows a camera forward in the cockpit looking aft, and with John coming out of the seat. This was actually some TV stuff that we did for a status report. Pretty good indication of the kind of problems we have with some of our comm lines. which you had to work pretty hard to make sure you didn't get tied up in those things.
And we stayed tied up in them the whole flight. The government is now looking at wireless mics that I think will really improve the capability of the crew to operate.
So the microphone lead reduced the expectation of complex microphone maneuvers. With the help of an invisible-to-see supporting wire, and in the upside-down scenes the assistance of gravity, the mic lead could still allow for simple airtime. The wire helped justify the hand-to-hand pass. Most of the passes were in fact hand-to-hand. This is such an outrageous pattern of fraud once you notice it. Even worse for NASA is in the wired days, we see people getting stuck on the invisible-to-see supporting strings, which is consistent with the method of fakery being used in that era. And in the live augmented reality era, we see the microphone and hands glitching out from time to time, which is exactly consistent with the method of fakery being used. Just to remind you, I'm talking about the live interviews here. So let's take a look at some of the evidence I have found of the invisible-to-see supporting wires in the live interviews from the shuttle era to back up my claims. These examples are just the ones in the available footage. I can only assume that there are worse examples that are not on general release, and that footage would have to be asked for specifically in a FOIA request. NASA being under no obligation to publish all their raw footage from their alleged space missions sure helps their cause. I suspect that some of the earliest STS missions have already been transferred to the dustbin of the National Archives, which, so far as I can tell, offers the opportunity for NASA to dispose of inconvenience footage, or at least make it not only expensive but also very difficult to access. This is something I will cover though at a later point in an update on the Skylab FOIA request. Not much to say on this one, it's fairly self-evident. If you want to hear me over-explain this evidence, go to my video called Magic on the Mic. There are a few small points I would change in my older videos. However, if they are still up, then I'm happy with the main thrust. I took down my original series, not because I was wrong about the techniques. In fact, I was shockingly accurate. Rather, I was off on the timing and the presentation was poor. Since my FOIA requests, and with more practice and editing, I can deliver my punches with greater accuracy. Some people may think I'm stuck in a rut with NASA. Far from it. There are decades to cover, and I have merely specialised in the topic. Here are a couple of simple examples to show you the methods they use. This is a very simple, straight upside down scene. When it is flipped to reality, you can see how he uses gravity and sleight of hand to give the illusion of floating. The invisible wire is in play, but he covers himself with the hand movement just in case. These guys were caught out in a scene from this mission. In this one it's all slightly off again. They've built the set at an odd angle, but they bring in a prop here which can be done with thin wires, and it is a good prop, and let's remember the effort that goes into props. They've got a 9.5 ton animatronic Jurassic Park T-Rex. Also worthy of consideration is that from our angle of view they get to work from side to side for the props as well as up and down. A small clue as to the how with this trick is revealed and crosses off spinning and wobbling as proof of NASA being in zero-G. Not every clip has a mistake, but enough do for us to know all is not as we are told. As the prop comes around for its final rotation, what appears to be a finger can be seen on it. It is not a finger because from the angle the item in question is first seen at, to when it leaves the prop there is no shoulder movement, and when his fingers come back into view they are fat and bright. This is not something consistent with them being in zero-G. What it is exactly is hard to say. However, it is consistent with a magician's assistant being at the side helping with the trick. So now we can safely say that spinning and wobbling is achievable for the live interviews using props, and post-production CGI is not required. I want to hat tip Steve Blakely here. He's the one who broke the spell for me when it comes to NASA,